Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a regular guest. He comes to us from Colorado. He works for the precious metals people, Miles Franklin. I'm talking about Andy Hoffman. Andy Hoffman, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Always a pleasure. Lots to talk about.
I wanted to start off with last week's. This is the second time in a couple of weeks that Bill Gross, the Bond King, this is a guy that knows about big money and about the bond market, which is orders of magnitude bigger than the stock market. And he comes out and says, let me just read this quote just to make sure I get it perfect. He talked about the negative interest rates, the negative yielding, $10 trillion in negative yielding money, bonds. And he says, quote, it's a supernova that will explode. What do you suppose he's talking about? You think he's just some crazy guy in his mother's basement somewhere in Alaska?
Well, he's not a crazy guy. He certainly has been to the top of the financial world. And I'm not saying that I think he's the most brilliant man or the least brilliant man, but he's certainly well connected with what's going on. And I think he works for Janus Capital now. He used to be at PIMCO. And he has said some pretty alarming things in line with what all the other, quote, big money, the big institutional mainstream money has been saying lately. The Soroses and the Druckenmillers and the Kyle Basses, across the board. And he's talking about what is going to happen. I mean, my article today was the most insane central bank lunatic scheme ever just started yesterday, which is the ECB buying healthy corporate bonds. I mean, we're talking about the biggest debt explosion in history atop the already biggest debt edifice in history. In fact, he also said last week what I've been saying all along and what anyone with any semblance of mathematical skill understands. He's talking about Japan's end game is to forgive their debt. Forgive means default. It means the collapse of major Western currencies. It means the domino game that started 40 years ago when they got rid of the gold standard, which must end, as all fiat currency standards end, in shambles.
Manarino called me about this last week. He was freaking out about the buying the corporate bonds. Do you think this signals the end, the buying of corporate bonds? And he's saying that this whole thing's going to completely go down. And he says that buying the corporate bonds is a big signal that it's going to go down. I say they have to buy; they're forced to buy them because you're yielding a percent or so higher than 10-year treasuries. Correct?
Well, look, they have to find something to buy. That's the whole point. And when you run out of government bonds to buy, believe it or not, the German bonds are now so negative yielding. This is the best credit in Europe that most of the bonds don't even qualify to be bought by the ECB anymore. They're running out of collateral. Remember when the Fed was buying their QE, which theoretically stopped 2 years ago, they bought up half of all the mortgage-backed securities and a third of all the treasuries. But more importantly, most of what they have is the long-term treasuries. The short-term stuff rolls itself over. So we have the same problem over here. And in Japan, they reached that point long ago. There's nothing left to buy. In fact, in Japan and Switzerland and some other places, they've been buying up all the stocks of the country. And in Japan in particular, they're going to run out of stocks to buy. And that's, I think I wrote an article a few weeks ago talking about the myth of QE to infinity, because at some point you are going to run out of things to buy. And when people realize that you're at record high prices and record high central bank balance sheets and nothing has changed and there's nothing left to buy, the only way to go is down.
And is this the big signal that with nothing left to buy, they're just trying to keep the thing going? The Fed is during the election year. Is that right? I mean, they're just trying to do everything they can. Is helicopter money not far behind, and is a big crash not far behind after that?
Oh, I would say the election is now way down on the list. There's this whole mainstream thinking over the years. Well, during the election year, we have to keep things going to stay in office. And of course they do. And of course, Janet Yellen has to get Hillary Clinton to win because otherwise she won't be reappointed. But I think this particular election year, really the election is, remember Obama had his secret meetings with Janet Yellen a few weeks ago. No doubt that was about the election. But more importantly, right now it's all about keeping the whole system from collapsing. I don't even think the election is even matters that much. They know very well for instance, this whole big smash of gold the past month, which is now already reversed and is almost back to its highs, was based solely on trying to get the commercials, i.e. the cartel, out of an all-time high net naked short position in gold and silver that they created with prices well below all-time highs. The point is, they're so scared right now they're doing anything. And as far as the ECB, they're like, well, we can't buy any more sovereign bonds because we bought them all and they're all well negative yielding. So let's buy corporate bonds. Let's buy junk bonds. Let's buy stocks. Let's buy anything. Let's do helicopter money. Heck, we almost had the Swiss almost voted for helicopter money this weekend, and eventually someone will. So again, I think that you couldn't have, per the title of today's article I wrote, you couldn't have more blaring signals that the end game is here because they literally are just buying up everything they can, and you know what? It's not working. I mean, look at our NFP jobs report, the worst one in years. Look at the Dr. Copper, right? Dr. Copper, the most industrially sensitive commodity in the whole world. Is anyone looking at what it's doing today? It's down like to 203. It's about to break to its lowest level since the 2008 crisis, and most commodities are right behind it. So again, I think the whole thing is crumbling. I said, I mean, I'm not a person who predicts anything. I said in the beginning of this year, I said, I don't think it's possible we can get through this year without a major calamity happening, and it's happening.
How long do you think we have? Do you think that this goes before? David Stockman has boldly said that this whole thing won't make it to the election cycle. He says it won't make it there. What do you think?
I don't. It's not even about the election to me, but yes, the timing. If we're talking about our election cycle, is the end of this year. I mean, look, we have the Brexit vote in 2 weeks. I mean, I've done as much work as I can on that. I did 2 articles about it. One about that I just did, called "If You Think Brexit the Movie Was Good, Watch This," and it was a podcast about the immigration issues over there. I find it hard to believe that any self-respecting Briton would say no to leaving the EU, and if they do, I think the nationalistic tensions that are everywhere, particularly in Europe, are going to explode, and that's only 2 weeks from now. So again, that's one potential event, but there's so much more. I mean, look at Japan's. Their machine orders came out today, down 15%. I mean, we're talking about all-out collapse of the global economy right now, all-out explosion of money printing and debt, collapse in commodities. Most currencies are at or near, or in many cases, well below all-time lows. Now you have this gold bull market, which no matter how hard the cartel tries, they just can't stop it. The institutional money is moving into gold and silver right now. That's why you're hearing about all these people like Soros and Druckenmiller, and why the mining stocks have gone up, and the ETFs are going up, and the premiums on the Sprott Fund and the Central Fund of Canada are going up. Heck, Bitcoin, which I've now embraced, is going up. People are scared around the world, and I agree. I can't see how we get through 6 months without something really, really terrible happening.
There's stories out right now about how George Soros is making these big, horrible, all of a sudden, these big, horrible, negative bets. You think he sees what you see?
Well, again, I don't like to put too much into him specifically because he, for some reason, there's this belief that he's always right and that he knows everything. No, he's been wrong just as much as he's right, and whether he's connected or not, and he probably is very well connected. He doesn't know what's happening. But the bigger picture, why I bring him up, is because it's not just him. It's all these big money mainstream players that are saying this. I mean, you had Mervyn King, who just retired as the head of the Bank of England, saying today, things are falling apart. You need to own gold. Alan Greenspan, in whitewashing his legacy partly, saying the same thing. Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, at the G7 meeting in Tokyo 2 weeks ago, telling the entire G7 group, we are in for a Lehman moment right now. And then, of course, you have the big hedge fund managers like the Soroses and the Druckenmillers, who are very visibly out there buying gold and shorting the stock market and talking about their fears. And Bill Gross, I mean, there's a common thread here of people realizing that it's all hitting the fan right now. And frankly, the election cycle of anything is going to make things worse, because if Donald Trump wins, I mean, it's not whether he's going to be good or bad. It's talking about shaking up everything in the establishment. Donald Trump is out there talking about, quote, renegotiating our debt, i.e. defaulting on it. But it's not just Donald Trump. It's all around the world. You can have we're only a year away from the National Front taking over in France. We're getting close to the Catalonian secession. We're going to have new elections in Spain and Portugal. Some point, Greece is going to explode. You have the Brexit coming up in 2 weeks. And that's just in Europe. Look what's going on in South America right now. Are we going to have the Olympics? Will Brazil even survive this year? Argentina, Venezuela, a lot of these Asian nations, like Korea had their surprise rate cut this morning. Japan's economy falling apart, China's Ponzi scheme, ghost cities, oversupply of everything. I mean, it's all coming to a head right now. So again, this year, can we make it through this year? Good luck to the powers that be, because right now the 99% of the world that's suffering from their policies is on the verge of becoming 99.9999%.
Do you think that war plays in your scenario at all? Do you think things get that things get so bad that to the powers that be in a bunker that war might be a good thing to pull to try to cover up that they've destroyed the economy?
Well, I don't have a scenario. The only scenario I'm sure of is that gold and silver will increase in real terms dramatically. But if you're talking about what is most likely to happen in the world, yeah, of course, war is the answer to everything, the answer to all economic ills, the answer to threats to the status quo, threats to staying in power. It's the only way to guarantee you'll stay in power is to start wars. And who has more to lose than the United States with its reserve currency crumbling? It's exponentially the highest debt levels of all time, the highest standard of living in the history of the planet. We have all of this to lose. Why would we not start wars, the governments, to try to maintain that status quo? Because if we just sit there, it's kind of like the gold cartel. They take their feet off the pedal for one day, and that's the end. Just like the United States government, if they don't create friction for one day, that's the end of their hegemony.
Gold and silver. It seems to me that they're trying to stick their foot on the neck of gold and silver, but it ain't cooperating. You think it's going much higher from here? Are all the signs to you saying it's going to go higher from me? And what about the stories about, hey, they got all these ounces and all these millions of ounces that they need to deliver that they don't have for delivery? What about what's going on with gold and silver? Start with gold.
Well, as for all the ounces that need to be delivered, I mean, this is an ongoing story for years. The fact is they've been able to kick the can this far with exponential amounts of shorting and swapping and leasing and, of course, outright selling, covertly, of course, what gold they have. I mean, the math says the only way we could have gotten this far is if the Fort Knox gold was gone. And even the Fed and a lot of the old Fed chairmen and a lot of the documents, not just of the Fed, but other central banks, have admitted that a lot of it has been swapped or leased, etc. That's the only way the game has gone on this far. As for what is going on right now, as I started the call, we talked about earlier, the institutional money is now coming in, hence the rise in mining shares and ETFs and all those kind of things, because the simple reason, it's a bull market. And that's what I've been screaming. I've been shouting from the rooftops since the beginning of the year. This is not like one of these things where, yeah, it goes up and they smash it right back down, et cetera, et cetera. This is the bull market that bottomed in the rest of the world's currencies maybe 2 years ago, restarted again here. And again, it was never a bear market. It was just a massive cartel attack that started in 2011 and only made it 2 years overseas and about 4 years here before it exhausted itself. That bull market started here in December, ironically, the day that the Fed raised interest rates in the middle of December. And that's why, with record demand and record low levels of production, I should say, not record production, low production. Production has peaked and it's falling dramatically right now, and record low levels of inventory, that's for sure. Look at the COMEX silver inventory now. Hit an all-time low this week after falling 15% in the past 2 days alone. So again, the lethal storm of record high demand, record low supply, falling production, exponential money printing, debt, all this stuff is all hitting at once. And you also now have all these geopolitical issues, the social revolutions, all these referendums. So again, there's just too many forces out there. And frankly, the blaring red signal that shows you the cartel has lost, and I documented it all through the past month during that hit, was that they did everything in their power. They naked shorted more gold and silver than they ever have, ever in the entire 15 years. And all they did was get gold to go from 1,300 to 1,200, and a week later it's back up in the 1270s. That's all they got. And right now they still have that record short position because they haven't been able to cover the short position because now there's so many other people that are buying. Every time they try to buy a little, it surges forward. So again, I think that the cartel is on its last legs. I also think the entire global monetary regime of stability is on its last legs.
Do you think silver will take off even higher, exponentially higher than gold? Is there more of a production diminishing in silver and supply diminishing in silver than in gold? Do you think that that's the recipe for silver taking off even higher than gold?
Well, yeah, and that's a softball question, considering that yesterday's article I wrote was called The Upcoming Historic Silver Shortage. So thank you for that. But again, this is nothing new for people like me and other experts in our area. There's dramatically less silver out there than gold, and most of it's been consumed. It also comes out of the ground far less frequent than ever before. And since two-thirds of the silver production in the world is the byproduct of copper, lead, and zinc mines, and we just talked about where copper prices are right now, I think you're going to see a precipitous fall. We predicted this 2 years ago on the Miles Franklin All-Star Silver webinar panel. We could have a 25% drop in silver production in the next couple of years as demand explodes to record highs. So, and there's absolutely no inventory out there. Look at the comics is a perfect example of it. They're down to about $350 million worth of silver, if it's even there at all. So, I've all along believed that the gold-silver ratio, which is now in the 70s, is going to fall somewhere near its historical level of 15-1. I can't say what the catalyst will be. Most likely, though, it will be people realizing its monetary value. I mean, silver has a bigger monetary history than even gold does, and it's obviously more appealing because it's more inexpensive than gold. And people don't even realize the Chinese word for silver, for money, is silver. The French word for money is silver. It will be re-understood by the world en masse. And when it does, I think the gold-silver ratio will have a dramatic decline while both metals are rising anyway.
Andy Hoffman, you came on and hit it out of the park, my friend. I mean, you nailed it. The stuff is hitting the fan right now. You don't think we'll make it out of this year, correct? Before we get some severe dislocations in the markets.
I agree. And by the way, remember, myself and Andy Schechtman, our firm's president and co-founder, we're doing this series of free nationwide Q&A rap sessions, no strings attached. The next one, perfect timing, is Friday, June 24th in Chicago, the day after the Brexit vote. If you'd like to attend, again, it's free, Hoffman@milesfranklin.com.
And all your work, people can read your work in the writer section of milesfranklin.com, along with Mr. Schechtman and other people. It's a free website. All your stuff is free. So I really appreciate it. It's milesfranklin.com if you want to follow Andy Hoffman, correct?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Greg.
Thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.